The story begins with the protagonist traveling inside a carriage while he is speaking with some human knights who were summoned from another world, but none of them have any kind of special skills, and all they have are defense and appraisal skills. After a while, when their carriage arrives in a distinct place, the protagonist is told that he would have to be the caretaker of the orphanage from now on. Slowly, he begins to walk into the premises of the orphanage, and the moment he goes to knock at the door, it falls off almost automatically because of the lack of care of the facility over time. When the carriage's knights say goodbye to him, he goes on to say that he needs some help, but they move on instead of listening to him, reminding him that he needs to manage everything on his own right now. As he walks into the hallway, he notices that the whole place is in ruins, as if a tornado came here and destroyed everything, garbage scattered around the premises here and there. While wondering if he will even be able to manage whatever is happening to this place, he listens to someone sobbing and notices that a goblin is torturing a small girl sobbing on the ground. As he asks the goblin about his intentions, it claims that he will be controlling the girl and the mansion, and the protagonist warns it to leave the facility as soon as possible. The goblin jumps into midair with the hope of annihilating the protagonist, and the protagonist ends up creating a shield around him to protect himself. As the shield breaks down, the monster charges at him once again, but he manages to knock the hell out of the goblin at one strike this time, which makes him wonder what is happening, as he was only supposed to have defense and appraisal skills, the only reason why he is in such a place without any kind of payment. The injured girl thanks him for helping her out, and even though the protagonist thinks that the goblin was in his way, she claims that she is happy even if she already died in this place. The girl suddenly passes out, and the moment the protagonist touches her, she starts to heal up as if he has some kind of healing skill in him. The girl is shocked to see that she is fine already, as if nothing has happened to him, and this whole time the protagonist keeps on wondering what is happening, as he wasn't supposed to cure diseases. As she begins to cry in happiness, he begins to pat her head to make her smile again, which makes her say that only a parent or master can touch her head, which makes the protagonist feel kind of reluctant once again. But as he goes on to stop doing so, she asks him eagerly to become her master, as she wants to stay beside him, and she begins to explain that it is in the beastman race customs to follow a master to serve so they can follow that person. As she begins to undress, she asks him to give her that kind of proof that will satisfy her mental peace for life, as the protagonist begins to wonder what is happening in this world. She begins to ask him to give her at least some kind of proof because she is worried whether she can make it for her master, but the protagonist claims that she shouldn't waste anything and put on her clothes. Even though it might feel natural to her, he thinks that she is a child who cannot engage in something intimate and states it will be fine when she is an adult. Then, when she thinks that he will eventually make her his wife, the protagonist states that the way she is thinking of everything is quite wrong, as they can find other partners, but she moves on happily as if her dream is about to come true, making the protagonist wonder if he said anything wrong. The girl claims that her name is Lucia, and she is excited to work with her, and the protagonist elaborates that he came here to open an orphanage, so if she wants to stay with him, she would have to live as an orphan. Also, he lets her know that he can only prepare food, and he doesn't know the rest, which feels rather fine to Lucia, who is excited to live with him. Even so, the protagonist begins to wonder if he really manages an orphanage, as his mother, who made and went out with men, and father, who raised him violently, made him the father figure in the whole picture, as he had done one to take care of himself. As he never really had a parent figure in his whole life to picture, he is unable to believe that the king made a good decision by sending him in here, as if he didn't even think evenly about the situation. But he thinks that it will be fine, as children grow up without parents' affection, which is also valid because of him, as they would just think about not being starved in the best possible outcome. Knowing that he has no choice but to accept his lifestyle as a caretaker, he gets ready for the life that he was given without bickering too much with himself. After making up his mind about having dedication, he begins to fix the walls that were ruined in time by using nails and planks one by one, and then when he goes on to look back to clean the place, Lucia comes in to say that she has already taken care of it to help him. But then when he goes on to take a look at the second floor, Lucia has done that as well, which reminds him to fetch some water. That was also done by Lucia, including pulling out the weed as well. When the work is done for the day, he suggests Lucia not to force herself to make him feel like she is useful, and claims that the work of a child like her is to play since ancient times, so she should go on to play without leaving the work. According to him, the housework should be his burden and not hers, and he recommends she should go on to play, but Lucia states that she is in her happiest mood when she is doing something for her master, so it will be better for her. While he wonders why there must be no one who will be working under anyone free of charge, he thinks of a way to settle all the debts and states that he will continue to reward her from now on, which is a rule to spare as long as he needs some help. Lucia thinks that it is enough to be with her gentle master as she begins to blush, and she asks that the only reward that she is able to take is head pats from him just like before. When he asks if it can be some kind of reward, she thinks that it can be for sure, and the protagonist decides to listen to her request to make her dream come true. But he claims that he will be there to help her with anything if something happens, as she is kind of defenseless to begin with, which she thinks will be okay as it is her master at the end of the day. Even though he thinks that she shouldn't sleep on his lap, she begins to snuggle with him even before he is able to say anything to her. Despite feeling that the whole circumstance might be kind of annoying to her in the end, he lets her have her fun at the end of the day. Both of them continue to drift away in the world of dreams, and he reminds himself of the event that happened back in the Castle of the Kingdom. After everyone finishes their skill testing event, they keep on pushing him to test his skills as they need to make it faster to defeat the Demon Lord, only to become a hero who will be saving the world. The moment he begins to test out his skills, the wizards think that it cannot be possible to see something like this happen, as someone with this kind of variation is supposed to have some kind of special ability in the first place. But the only things that he had were the protection and basic form of appraisal, which makes him one of the lowest grade heroes. The king flabbergasts, not knowing how someone like him ended up being summoned by them, so the whole hall starts calling him an imbecile and lame, which even forces him to apologize to them for being summoned to be useless like this. He thought that it must have been natural for all of them to bully him, as except for him, everyone is now supposed to be an archwizard or some kind of paladin to help defeat the demon lord, having their high skill tiers. This whole time the king assumed that he would have been able to join the military or government, but all of his plans were ruined because of his skills, and as he ends up confirming his name and identity, he ends up being deployed in the orphanage in the outskirt district, where he will have to manage at least 10 orphans at once, and that is the only way he will be able to make it up to be transferred into his own world. Soon enough, when he wakes up, he realizes that he has been sleeping this whole time and reminds himself that he had some money which he will be using to buy some necessities in the orphanage. As Lucia wakes up after some minutes, he claims that he is about to go to the market to shop for some items, and suggests she should look over the house until he returns in the evening, but she wants to go with him. When he finally goes to the market, he once again realizes that he is in a whole different world, and while Lucia begins to go through the weapons and traditional clothing, the protagonist suggests to her to calm down and thinks that he shouldn't have brought her along with him. Then when she begins asking for his hand, saying that she might get lost, the protagonist states that he knows what her intentions are, and there is no way he would pretend this visit to be a date. But when he later notices that there are a lot of guys looking at them, he does it anyway, knowing that it must not be safe for Lucia. After spending some time in the market for a while, the protagonist realizes that someone must have been looking for him this whole time, and Lucia suggests he should look at her, saying that she has received some fruits for free. She even asks him if something is wrong with him, as he is looking everywhere for a while. He claims that it is fine, so they move on their way. After a while, they notice that two guys are fighting with each other for some reason, and as he thinks of moving on with Lucia, he feels that they must be stupid. Then some huge guy comes at them, saying that he wants to have lunch with Lucia since she is quite cute, making the protagonist feel like he must have made a mistake after bringing her into the market. When he thinks that it is annoying, Lucia thinks that it must be quite amazing that everyone wants to hit on her master, and when he lets her know that he was talking about her the whole time, she gets nervous in an instant. Then when the guy keeps on making it a whole lot of drama, she begins hiding behind her, hoping that the protagonist will protect her till the end. When the protagonist claims that she needs to learn how to protect herself, the man says that they are hurting his feelings and asks the protagonist if he is about to take responsibility. As the guy claims that he needs to send her to drink for some time in the pub, the protagonist can't help but wonder why the man is even speaking with him at all, and as he keeps his mouth shut, he goes on to throw a slap on his face by lunging at him. But the protagonist instantly ends up forbidding him from doing so by crossing his hands in a flash moment, which makes him wonder why his body reacts on his own, while Lucia is flabbergasted after seeing him in action. He couldn't help but wonder how he managed to see his hands in slow motion, and as he kept on wondering, the man asked him to leave his hand and release him. But the protagonist states that the only way he is about to escape is by apologizing first and keeps increasing the pressure on his hand to teach him a lesson. As the man begins to cry, the protagonist asks him to ask for forgiveness once again, providing the condition of staying away from them after this time. When the man makes sure that he accepts his loss, the protagonist claims that he will be letting him go this once, but not all the time, which lets the protagonist and Lucia leave the area. But it seems that the man had an ulterior motive to think of, so when the guys fighting together end up taking out their swords, it somehow gets thrown in the direction of the protagonist. Just when the bald man is about to throw a punch in the protagonist's direction, the sword comes in that same instant, and the protagonist ends up shattering the sword, which shocks everyone including him. The way his hands are automatically working on his own keeps making him feel like something else is going on right now, and the crowd keeps on increasing after seeing him in action. But even though he keeps on running while holding Lucia's hand, he thinks that someone must have been watching him from afar. On the way, Lucia is rather impressed by seeing him in action, and even so, he thinks that he only did those things to protect himself and not her. But she still thinks that it was great for her, as he even took her on a date and protected her till the end, which makes him react in a harsh way. He claims that she must find someone in the future to do things that she loves, and until then she will have to wait. But no matter what he keeps on saying in her direction, she doesn't seem to even pay attention to any of his words, which remind him once again that he needs to go back and prepare his food.